Hello and welcome to Zed Talks. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe. On this week's Zed Talk, I wanted to discuss ways I found to make the creative process a little easier. I think having having jobs in a capitalist sort of environment makes you associate working on something with not enjoying what you're doing. So there can be an unconscious sort of connection between working on art and feeling like you're not doing work. And I think some of this is because if we don't have a guarantee of financial reward for working on something, we feel guilty for it. But I also think there's a connection to enjoying yourself and feeling like that's not really work, because that's always kind of drilled into your head when you have a job. Like if you're laughing too much, if you seem like you're enjoying yourself too much, then you're not really working, are you? You're goofing off. You're not really taking it serious. And in reality, that's not necessarily the case. It just means you're having a good time while you're doing your work. And I think it can be how we view our own art in some ways. You are enjoying what you're doing, so you think you haven't done a very good job of working on your art. I sometimes will work on projects that I don't always like as much because I feel like I have to do those, or I'll put myself in a situation where I make sort of a promise or a big deal about a project that I'm not as excited about, and then I feel like I have to focus on that. I have to work on that. And then I kind of like beat myself up about it, because if I don't like working on it, then, I'm being lazy, not a real thing. Or I'm being, like I just don't want to work, or like all of these things, when in reality what I did was instead of creating an environment where I'm enjoying what I'm working on, I'm punishing myself for enjoying creating art. When I first got Patreon, I think I didn't really know what I was capable of. Emotionally, I didn't know what I could do or what I had the time for. I just knew what I had done creatively in the past. So I kind of created all these tiers and made all these sort of promises over things that didn't feel rewarding for me. And it wasn't that I didn't have the ability to make them or that I didn't want to give people what they wanted, but I didn't know how to make those things for myself. I felt like I put them on as tier rewards as a way to hold myself up to some weird standard that didn't really exist for anyone but me. And I ended up not liking doing Patreon and having a really difficult time with it and just feeling stressed out and overwhelmed. And I repeated this in several other projects that I did over time, where I would just sort of set myself up for disappointment. I would make things that I thought people wanted to see, or I would make things based on what people seemed to respond to more as opposed to what made me feel good. And then I started getting really resentful and really bored and really kind of just not interested in what I was doing, and just feeling really bad about it. And I sort of came to the realization that it was because I was making things that I thought people wanted without actually asking them if they wanted it. I was just making assumptions on what they wanted, and then creating this whole scenario where I was making art I didn't even care about for an assumption that wasn't even necessarily true. I do a lot of different things. Like I make YouTube videos, I work on photography, and I write. I do sometimes have to prioritize what I work on. If I do a lot in a day, if I do too much in a day, I end up getting stressed out and feeling really bad, which I associate with hard work. And that's not really true at all. Learning to prioritize projects, learning to work on one thing and maybe not try to do everything all in one day, that's not just been about learning a process, it's been about unlearning a lot of things as well, and a lot of things that are brought on by capitalism. If you don't like what you're making, if you don't like how you're making it, reassess, figure out what's going wrong. Do you enjoy what you're making, but the ways in which you're going about it feel bad? Then change the ways in which you're going about it. Scheduling time to work on your art is really important. But I think it's really important to remember that just because you have availability in time doesn't mean you have emotional availability to work on art. So just because you have time after you get home from your 9 to 5 to work on something before you have to start making dinner for yourself doesn't mean you're emotionally able to get into that space. That's completely understandable. And it doesn't make you a bad artist. It doesn't make you not professional. It means that you take your art seriously enough to want to be emotionally present in order to make art. The ways in which I've been able to make the process of creating art easier on myself, I've not just streamlined the process, but I've worked on ways to find what feels good to work on and when it feels good to work on it, and ultimately to listen to myself and my own emotional availability when it comes to working on art. Because if I push myself or I end up just not being able to make art in the ways that I want to, punishing myself for that doesn't make the process any easier in the end. Thanks so much for checking out this video, and special thanks to my patrons. They help making these videos possible. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon, check the links below, and I'll see you again next week.